listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome everyone. Today I'm joined with Sirena Scarlett Fatale. She is a chaos switch and priestess of the dark goddess, dedicated to guiding others through deep, transformative shadow work. As a practitioner of the dark goddess magic, she weaves together witchcraft, healing, and trauma-informed practices to help individuals explore their hidden depths and reclaim their power. With a focus on empowerment through the archetypes of the dark goddess, Serena's work encourages embracing duality, healing ancestral wounds, and crafting personal rituals for spiritual growth. Welcome to the show!
Yay!
Thanks for coming on. I'm so excited to explore your work and share it with our audience.
And I'm excited to share it with everybody.
So, for those who don't know you, could you just share a little bit of background on yourself and your spiritual journey with us?
Yeah, so my name is Sirena Scarlett Fatale, and I am a chaos witch bitch, um, priestess of the dark goddess, and a BPD thriver. So my spiritual journey is really, really interesting. I grew up in a very super religious household, and I was able to escape at 14. And when I escaped, I shut everything down and went into a very nihilistic, anarchist place, and I did everything that I wasn't supposed to. And I was told was evil, and realistically, I put myself in a lot of fucked up situations because I was so spiritually traumatized and religiously traumatized that I just wanted to do everything that I was told not to do. And so I was in a very numb state throughout my teen years. And I got into because part of the religion that I grew up in, they actually tie in the intuition and make it this weird spiritual thing. So I was getting all this intuition and all these gut instincts that something was wrong, and I associated that with this religious trauma, this religious upbringing, and so I ignored it and I just rejected it. And so I got into a lot of really fucked up situations because of that. And so I was in a very abusive relationship from 16 to 18, and he got very violent with me one day, and I literally was abused for like 12 hours straight on every level possible. And I collapsed out of exhaustion and passed out. And I had a experience that the only way I can say is I was connected to the web of life. I passed out and I had this out of body experience, and I became connected to everything. There were like little spider webs that shot out of me and connected me to every living thing on the earth. And suddenly my empathy came back and my ability to feel things came back. And I was very traumatized by this experience. And so for a long time when I was having spiritual experiences, my nervous system would associate it with it. And it was very intense. But so at this like I think I was 17. And so started going through all this, and I started having all these crazy downloads and went down a lot of crazy rabbit holes. And I'm so grateful social media was not what it was, because it would be a fucking mess. I was very alone and isolated. I'm very glad that I did not have the chaos of misinformation that is out there today. Um, but I started reading tarot, and then I got out of this relationship, and I was homeless because I had a shitty home life with my family, and I didn't want to go to my mom because she was super religious. So I was homeless for a while, and I would read tarot and stuff outside of like bars and on the street corner, and punk shows, and like piss smelling alleyways. And it was really how I really learned to read tarot. And then addiction took over because, when you have a lot of trauma, addiction is just what your nervous system likes, and it numbs things out and you run. So I ran and things got turned off again for a while. And I just kind of ran until I was sitting in a jail cell 5 years later. And I realized something had to change. I get out of jail and I get pregnant with my kid. And then it was like, oh, yeah, something's got to give. So um, I spent just a lot of time trying to figure out my shitty marriage and dealing with the death of my brother, which when my brother died, I gained the gift of mediumship, and that was kind of a really weird experience. And uh just a lot of crazy stuff and in the chaos, and I started having anxiety and just so much was going on, and I was in so much grief over my brother and my shitty marriage. And so I started doing yoga and I started meditating, and shit fucking something clicked. And this was back in like 2016, and something just clicked within me. And I did like yoga for like and meditation for like over a year every single day, like ritualistically. And it was a really good period of my life. And I started getting this call to that I had to do. There was something I had this phenomenal space, even through addiction. I was the person that people would come to, especially women who experienced some type of abuse. I was the space where, when I was a teenager, where girls would come and tell me, so and so's dad did this to me, or this was going on. And so I really somehow, at a very young age, even though I was super fucked up, was this safe space for women. And it's something that's always kind of carried. And I have a lot of compassion for men, and we can talk about that another day. But I felt the dark goddess call very early on. I was drawing pictures of like this demoness like thing, and it was very Lilith. And I didn't realize it at the same time. It was a very Lilith energy. And so, yeah, and I started, and like many of us, I found the little light worker, the little crystal girly, um, fluffy, light and fluffy kind of shit. And I rode with that until suddenly I don't know, I'm too dark, and my darkness started showing. And I yeah, that was interesting because I went to a light worker school, accredited, everything. I got loans taken out, and I was like too much. I didn't fit this little light worker, cookie cutter, healer energy. And nothing against it. There's a lot of people that does them well, but I realized probably in 2018 that I was a shadow worker. And that was the label that I could only explain as myself, was that I would go where angels fear. And and we all have a role and we all have things. I just can delve into the darkness a little deeper than some. And um, I started psychopumping my brother a lot and started digging into the family trauma and the family secrets. And my brother helped me work through a lot of that stuff. He helped bring a lot of stuff to the surface. And one day he said, "Sirena, chaos magic. You need to find chaos magic." I was like, and I found chaos magic. And that's a whole rabbit hole story. I'm infamous in corners, and I'm banned from, I'm like Agatha Harkness in their eyes, but whatever. Um, and I realized how to do a lot of stuff with chaos magic. And chaos magic is really, when you look at the history of chaos magic is realistically, it was created by a bunch of like guys who were really tired of ceremonial magic in the 70s out in England. And so they really broke down the basic of like magic and occultism outside of the dogmatic ceremonial approaches. And so it's really just that like raw mainline of magic that really gives us that ability to um and it's very results based. It's very fuck around and find out. And so yeah, and so I found chaos magic, and really vibed with a lot of that, and a lot of the kind of subcultures that are attached to it, and some of the communities that are still attached to it. And so that was cool. And but there was always this like dark goddess energy that was calling me, and I got very serious over the past like 4 or 5 years with that, along with chaos magic. And chaos magic is really cool because you can create your own belief system and you can create your own processes. And so the path of the dark goddess has this very chaos magic kind of concept, but I infuse like the dark goddess stuff, as well as somatic and nervous system healing and all this stuff with shadow work. So, oh, we're going to tie into my mental health part because it's important. So, while all this was going on, I got diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder, and it's a cluster B personality disorder. It's in the same category as narcissism, which is why I'm very vocal against like not everybody's narcissist. Like, anyways, it's real. I understand, narcissistic abuse is very real, and I'm not trying to diminish the actual situations, but there's a lot more diagnoses out there, where people can exhibit psychological abuse. So, anyways, BPD, if you go type in BPD into things and you read forums, you will read horrific fucking things. It's a very stigmatized mental health disorder, and I struggled a lot. And I had issues getting proper care for it for a lot of different reasons. First off, there's a huge shortage of borderline personality disorder trained and aware therapists. A lot of the ones that out there are very ableist, and they view us as complicated, and there's just a really toxic mentality attached to it even within the mental health field. So I found shadow work around the time that that happened, and I just started trying to figure out how to heal on my own, and it was a long journey, very long journey. And I discovered how trauma affects our nervous system, and then I started seeing the parallels of chaos magic, witchcraft, and trauma informed healing techniques. And it all clicked together, and I created the path of the dark goddess, and I navigated it well. I worked through a pretty decent part, and I've came up under the underworld, and I am now here to be a guiding light for other people who find themselves on the path of the dark goddess.
Wow. Your story gave me chills multiple
Thank you.
times. And it's just so beautiful how you've been able to work through this darkness, but also like integrate it and then help others come out of that because there's so many people that are in those places. And like you said, there's not always a lot of trained or people that even want to deal in the shadows because it's so taboo in our culture to talk or work with those aspects of ourselves. But we all have a shadow, so it is important to have someone who can guide you through healing and working on some of that because it's just so empowering once we
Yeah.
finally integrate the shadow. So that's
Yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
that you are unafraid and you have made this beautiful system of like helping people on their path. So.
Yeah, I hope that whole story, like, it was, like, a very condensed, like, I gotta tell it all in, like, 5 minutes, but,
Right.
that's what it is, and, the thing that I really love, about shadow work is it's a lifelong journey. And when you look into like Carl Jung's concept and where he came with shadow work, and shadow work is actually part of a whole model. So
Mhm.
shadow is just the unconscious, rejected, unloved parts of ourselves. And a lot of people think that that means trauma or that means these nasty things, but it's also like where our creativity hides, our sexuality can hide, our joy, like a lot of beautiful things and positive things also live within the shadow because we can also reject like our strengths and our assets as well. It's not just repressed trauma. So it's a really cool thing, but it is a journey of unfolding. And um, when you look at the model of where like shadow work and Carl Jung comes from, like we have the shadow, we have the ego, and people think, oh, we need to kill the ego. No, like the ego is actually a very important part of ourselves. That's our consciousness. That is our conscious awareness of who we are. And yes, there are people with unhealthy egos, and there's a lot of stuff, but that ties into the it ties more into the shadow work aspect. And so like
Mhm.
the shadow is our uh unconscious self, while our ego is our conscious part. And so it's like the feminine and the masculine, if you want to go down that route. And then you go into the persona, which is the mask that we present ourselves when we're out in public, when we're at work, when we're dealing with acquaintances. And that also is a form of protection because we just don't show all aspects of ourselves to everybody, and not everybody deserves that. And then there is the anima animus, which is the masculine and feminine parts of ourselves. And then the whole, all of that is the self.
Uh-huh.
And shadow work is, and there's a really crazy word that like Carl Jung used around it. It's like zygote. Um, but it is the process of unfolding and coming into self-realization and the awareness of all of that, and that's what the self is. And then he even says you can't really fully integrate everything. Like this is a lifelong journey,
Right.
like of coming into yourself, because there's always more layers that we peel back.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful description of it. And yeah, I think it's just the unconscious part. It's not to be feared, but if you reject it, then you're missing. It's like you're not a complete person. It's like you're missing a whole component of yourself that has, like you said, beauty and power and magic there, And to really know ourselves, we have to look beneath the surface as well. And
That's a really great way to segue into spiritual bypassing,
yes,
because
yes.
because we were going to talk about that today. So like, spiritual bypassing really is a form of rejection of the shadow. And I think that there is a bit of self-preservation in rejecting the shadow in spiritual bypassing, because sometimes it is easier, and sometimes our brain will lock away traumatic events. It will blind things from us. It will put things into the unconscious for a reason, because sometimes we just aren't ready to process or deal with a situation in that moment for whatever reason. And so I know that might be like a super in-depth take when it comes to spiritual bypassing, but really, um, I think that there is a bit of that attached to it, and not in all circumstances, but also people are just scared to face the truth. People are scared. Like it's a lot, and it's easier to explain these difficult things with a pretty spiritual label, and giving it this cute fluffy concept. But I think underneath it all, there's probably trauma responses attached to it, of like not being able to face these parts of ourselves. And I have compassion for it. Sometimes we got to fluff things up, because that's shadow work and delving in. I don't always think there's a right time, but sometimes there's a wrong time.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where I look at it. And in a lot of my work, I'm really trying to push like trauma informed shadow work. And I am, because when I was doing shadow work, I was close to an individual who like pushed me in, and it was like she pushed me into the deep end, and I didn't know how to swim.
Mm.
Is how I felt. And so it was a really like difficult time, when I first started my shadow work journey, because there was no trauma informed. The person who was telling me just like I said, just pushed me into the deep end and said, "Good fucking luck figuring it out." And that's not really how it should be. And so sometimes we do have to keep it a little light and fluffy and bunny, and kind of use that stuff. But the danger of spiritual bypassing, um, is putting really dangerous labels on things and sugarcoating things, and it can be harmful, especially if you are in a position of power. If people look up to you, because people are looking to you for healing, people are looking, and that's where like cults come in, and it's really fucking weird. um can I give an example of like one of my least favorite forms of spiritual bypassing, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The twin flame thing
Oh,
is one of
yeah.
my biggest. um and you know what, here's the thing. I'm not going to doubt that maybe there might be something like that. I don't know. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know. You know, the world is mysterious, but I do know the people who came up with the twin flame ideology, it was a very toxic, like cult-like experience. And this
Mhm.
is even before that weird group out there, whatever, Twin Flame University or whatever, like that's pre these people. But I guess you could look at it, but I've seen so many people, and I've read for psychic sites, I've been doing tarot, and I see so many people not want to face the reality of codependency, of attachment issues, and the fact that they're in an unhealthy or abusive dynamic. And not be able to face the truth, and it's just easier to feed into that addiction because codependency and unhealthy and toxic relationships affect our brain chemistry just like addiction does. And having to face those childhood wounds, it's easier just to say this is some crazy spiritual phenomenon and they're going to come back. And it taps into limerence as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that because the twin flame thing, I mean, it's like everywhere. And I've yet to find someone who told me that they had a twin flame that it actually worked out in a good way. And they never have never ended up together. And they come to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so like they were in a cult. Like I was, it's totally wrapped up in this concept." And, I've seen people being in abusive relationships, but someone told them, a psychic told them it was their twin flame. And so they're literally staying in these relationships because they have this belief that there's only one person for them, and that person just happens to be an abusive asshole. And I'm just like, so that's where it's toxic, soulmates, sure. Like there's people that help us grow on the path.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, and there's many of them. So for me personally, like I never could think about like, oh, there's just one person and that's it. And I'm going to be obsessed with them. And, it's just, I don't know. I'm just glad you touched on it because it's something that has been on my mind for a while, but it's hard to talk about it because, people get
It's
so wrapped up in
so
it.
And it's so ingrained within the spiritual communities.
Yeah.
It is so ingrained, and so much of the information out there about twin flame ideology comes from cult like, comes from very bigoted, comes from very fucked up ideologies. And people do not know where a lot of this new age spirituality, they do not know the roots
Right.
of where these belief systems come from, and they were taken from Hindu and indigenous cultures and bastardized and twisted around and rewritten. And a lot of times these and it was Western white people who took this shit, they interjected bigotry into it. And
Hmm.
people just can't face the fact that a lot of these ideologies that they have, and I'm gonna say it, star seeds. I would love to like really genuinely like be an alien from another planet. And that's why I have all these weird things about me. But realistically, I have a borderline personality disorder. I was raised by a neurodivergent mom. Neurodivergency runs in my family. And so, yeah, I'm a little quirky. I have a lot of this stuff. And I think these labels and these concepts give people this peace instead of facing the reality of their trauma, of how they relate to people. And it also makes us feel special, like we have a purpose here. And we all want to feel special. We all want to feel important. And it just touches all this stuff. And you know what? I'm just that bitch. And, some people might not fuck with me, and that's cool. But I'm here to fucking pull that shit back because I've witnessed a lot of fucked up shit in these spiritual communities
Hmm.
for a long time. I'm from Arizona, Sedona, the little Mecca. Like, I've seen some shit, and I've seen some
Yeah.
fucked up shit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, some people gravitate towards it. And it's
And you know what?
like,
I did too.
yeah,
I did too. And I get
yeah.
why. And then when you look at um a lot of the basis around a lot of the stuff, you're like, wow, the people who wrote this, it was very cult like, and it was just very messed up in a lot of different ways. But it's the mainstream out there, and it is what it is. But this is how people really spiritual bypass, using all of these popular buzzwords and all of these popular concepts, and they don't get to the real roots of where this stuff comes from. And so of course they can't get to the roots of their stuff, because it's easier to put on this mystical little magical Piscean kind of concept, this delusional Mercury energy, than have to face the reality, that we live on a very traumatizing planet.
Hmm.
We live on a planet that is full of a lot of trauma. There's a lot of intergenerational trauma, and it is just easier to do this and put these concepts on there than face the reality of doing the internal work and undoing the shit. It's just easier to put a little bow on it and make yourself feel special.
Right. As you're talking, because we touched on the anima and animus, I feel like the true twin flame journey would be connecting to the masculine as a woman, the masculine aspect of myself, which comes from going within, not seeking a partner outside of myself. And I feel like
Yeah.
people that's maybe intuitively why they're drawn to it, because they do feel like there's something there, but they're looking outside when they could be, finding it within themselves. But that's not
I
taught to
mean,
us, you know?
let's be real. We're social animals. We're not allowed to be alone. We're not meant to be alone. We grew up in a very tribal kind of concept. We grew up in the hunter gatherer. Like it is in like wired into our nervous system and into our psyche and into so much that we are not meant to be alone. However, society has put this huge pressure through a lot of different stuff, and there's huge religious undertones in this as well, that the only form of like love and connection that matters is this focus on like romantic and sexual relationships. And realistically, and this is something that I've had to like super fucking unpack recently, like Pluto's been in opposition of my Venus for like almost 2 years,
Mhm.
and like I'm just ready for Pluto to stop raw dogging my Venus.
Yes. Yeah, Pluto
And
natally squares my Venus, so I feel that.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Fuck. 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 Yeah. The Plutonian love energy is fun. But we're taught to find our fulfillment. And this is where like relationship anarchy and like like solo poly's really done a lot for me, even though I'm the most celibate slut you will ever meet right now. Um, but it's why I'm like really big on relationship anarchy, because it helps you understand the type of fulfillment that you get from all different types of relationships in your life. And it really deconstructs relationships and like, why do I want people in my life? Like, what enrichment do people bring into my existence? Because especially like men for a very tragic reason, um they they crave intimacy so much, and they put so much of that pressure onto their partners, and they just don't know how to connect with like other people as well. And it's just tragic. And so we have this like concept that our all of our needs are supposed to be fulfilled by one person, and
Yeah.
that's our romantic partner, and that's very untrue. And so it's just that gross hyper individualization kind of concept that removes us from societies and from communities when we're really that's against our nature.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the toxic positivity. We've lightly talked
Oh
about the
my God, yeah.
fluffiness, and then the tragic optimism. What are your
I love
thoughts on this?
tragic. I love tragic optimism. So tragic optimism, I don't know his name, Gemini placements. So like I will talk about everything, but also and so there was tragic optimism was coined by a Holocaust survivor who actually was a psychiatrist, a Jewish psychiatrist, and he got swooped up and was put into concentration camps. And he talks a lot about the mindset that he had to develop that he swears is what kept him alive. And it was tragic optimism. And so it was sitting here being like, holy fuck, this really sucks. This is fucking horrible. This is a fucked up situation, but I choose to find the little glimmers of hope. And I'm going to hold on to this hope and dive into this hope that I am going to make it out someday. And so it talks a lot about admitting and acknowledging the truth of a situation, and acknowledging that this is hard, this is difficult, this fucking sucks. But you know what? Today I saw a butterfly, and that butterfly was really fucking beautiful, and I love that butterfly, and that butterfly brought me a sense of hope.
Mhm.
And so it's acknowledging things suck, but also having hope that, it's not always going to be this way. Things are going to get better.
Right. Yeah, I really love that because, we hear a lot about toxic positivity, but not the tragic optimism because
Yeah.
it is about the balance because we do sometimes need that positive mindset to get us out of the bad situation, but gaslighting ourselves and trying to say that the bad situation didn't
For
happen.
other people, like people don't know how to hold space for people. So I find the irony that the reason when I reached out to you was because you were going through this like really shitty banking situation.
Yeah.
And then what, like a couple days ago, it got resolved and it was like it
Right.
comes to full circle.
Yes. Right, but it was hard. And everyone's like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
just not thinking abundantly." I'm like, "Guys, like I'm out so much money right now. I can't think
But
abundantly." Like I needed to process the fact that, okay, well, I have to now re-navigate. I have to share so that people can help me until I get the money back, which took 2 months, you know? And so had I not shared my experience, I would have been fucked because I needed help until the money got reimbursed. So,
or like the mindset of like you must have done something energetically to line yourself into
right.
this. Like go fuck yourself. Like here's the thing, when people are poverty and like financial stuff like that affects your basic fucking needs. And there's
Yes.
like some flow chart by some psychologist that's a triangle. I don't fucking know his name off the top of my head, but like your basic needs were being threatened and
Mhm.
like you can't be like to just sit there and like sugarcoat like your housing, all these things, like all this stuff reach like, yeah, that fucking sucks. And there's nothing spiritual outside of some asshole out there decided to fucking to be a dick.
Right.
That's really all it is.
Right. And it bothered me because like I'm a very spiritual person. I do think optimistically, but that at that moment in time when it first happened, there was nothing optimistic about it at that
No,
moment.
there
Now
wasn't.
now I can see how it's turned around. I got the money back. Things worked out, you know. And so I can laugh about it now, right? Mercury's laughing his ass off. It started the
Oh my
first day
God,
of the
there was
Mercury
some Mercury shit, right? There was some Mercury shit involved with
It
that, of
was
course.
started the day of the Mercury retrograde. And yeah, I even went to the bank and I was crying. And the woman's like,
Yeah.
Mercury just went into retrograde. And I was like, yeah, I know, okay. I know it'll
You
resolve.
better remind me. But yeah, that's God bless the fucking yeah. That's hilarious. But that's the reality is like sometimes shit really fucking sucks and I don't need to hear a spiritual fucking reason. I just need someone to sit in the dark with me and say,
Yes.
"Yeah, this fucking sucks."
Yeah. The people that, sent me $10 or whatever to help me pay for the vet bills that were also big at that
Oh,
time,
yeah.
they helped me a lot more than the people that were gaslighting me, telling me, oh, well, it's really not that bad. Like, why you have to be so dramatic? It just
I'm
And they
allowed
were
to be
those
fucking
spiritual.
dramatic.
It was those spiritual kind of people that don't even really know me, first and
Yeah.
foremost, that are like,
Mhm.
oh, you're just thinking negatively. And I've went down that rabbit hole of like trying to be positive with every single thought. And it's not realistic, right? It's just
It
not
isn't.
realistic.
It's not, and when you look at like we'll tap a bit into like the concept of like limiting beliefs. I hate it when people say that my thoughts create my reality because there is some truth to that, but like, bitch, I have borderline personality disorder. I have
Right.
fucked up thoughts, okay? Like I have very fucked up thoughts. When it actually starts affecting my reality is when I attach myself to those thoughts and I allow it to fucking stem into my fucking childhood wounds. I allow it to attach to the limiting beliefs, and then my actions start matching it.
Mhm.
That's when my thoughts create my reality. It's not because I thought a thought,
Right.
It's just, and that's just like, yeah, our thoughts and our words do have power, but at the same time, sometimes thoughts are just thoughts.
Right.
Sometimes, words are just things that pop out of your mouth. Like they don't always have to be like not everything's like a super wild spiritual experience, but at the same time, I love to find magic in the mundane. But it's more like,
Right.
look at this flower and look at this fucking butterfly and look at this delicious cup of fucking coffee in the morning. Not like, you know, you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Right. The balance in this reality, it's light and dark, and we have to work with
Yeah.
both aspects of the self. And a lot of, when I was studying Carl Jung, I'm trying to think of the guy that oh, he has Robert Johnson. I was like, he has a name of a musician, but he's not. And he was talking about a lot of the people that commit these like really bad crimes and stuff are the people that just they are the best people ever, right? Like they've never done anything wrong. They're like they've been a nun their whole life and then they just do something crazy because like
Oh
their
yeah.
shadow is so big because every time you do these really good acts, you're just feeding that shadow. You have to recognize the other aspect of the self. So it's just like it's
Yeah.
actually not beneficial. to just blow smoke up your ass all day. Like, oh, I'm so good. Oh, I donated to charity and like brag about all the good things that you've done.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm offensive and I enjoy it. There's an edgelord in me that never died. But one thing that I really wanted to say was also when you look at like the toxic positivity and everything has to be fucking, poo-poo, great, that actually is a very harmful thing for inner child healing because
Mhm.
sometimes we need to be validated. Sometimes we need to validate that things fucking suck. And, you know, there is a level of like having to like sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to breathe into this and I'm going to breathe in. And this is like somatic sensing where you
Mhm.
have to like literally sit down and just validate that right now this is really hard for me. Right now, this is very difficult for me, and I'm feeling a big emotion, and this emotion is fucking valid to feel, and I
Right.
need to sit with it for a moment. That is like inner child healing, that is somatic healing, that is
Mm.
like shit that they teach you in therapy when you don't know how to validate, nurture, and soothe yourself. And so all these people are who are out here and validating themselves and teaching other people to invalidate themselves, like they're just repeating probably some fucked up pattern because they have mommy issues.
Right. Right. And I mean, it's cool to just kind of know that and just accept that, to not take their stuff personally, because you're like, well, they don't really know. I spent way too
Yeah.
much money on my therapy to not feel my grief and to not feel my pain and to
Yeah.
pretend like I'm not suffering when I'm suffering. Like my therapist had helped
Yeah.
me get through that. And I'm not going to let some person that hasn't even probably done a lot of that work tell me that I'm just not positive enough.
Shut the fuck up. I'm not here to be fucking positive, okay? I'm
Right.
here to be tragically optimistic and I'm here to fucking sit with people in the fucking darkness. And we're gonna just tap into some fucking shit here. As women, how many of us are taught, through its social, cultural, or religious stuff that we have to our anger, our sexuality, our frustrations, all of our shit needs to be fucking kept under wraps because when our husband gets home, he's had a hard day at work and he needs us to be on our best behavior. Go fuck yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that
And
you're like working with women because I think we really need some guidance as we break some of these social norms of how a woman's supposed to act and to be. We've seen this
yeah.
Mother Mary figure, but we don't have a Lilith figure that's celebrated in our culture. So it's like
Ooh.
we need that empowerment.
Yeah, so in one of my shadow work journeys where it's specific around Lilith, I actually have an Eve archetype and a Lilith
Hmm.
archetype.
Hmm.
And I actually talk about finding the balance between the two of them because when you fall too far into one or the other, it's unhealthy. And Eve is the shadow archetype energy of what society, the patriarch, religions, all of that say women should be like.
Hmm.
And and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of positive things about the Eve archetype, like, really good stuff, but women are forced to live in that shadow of how a woman should be and how a woman should act. And so, but you know what? I'm here for feminine rage.
Yes. I love it. I love it. We need it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just yeah. Anyways, let's talk about do you feel people got a good concept around the around like toxic positivity?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Because I want to talk about the witch wound.
Yes, that's where I was gonna go. So let's dive in.
Okay, so I'm assuming a lot of your listeners are probably very Tennessean.
Hmm.
Okay, and Knoxville. Okay, so I'm not from Tennessee, in case you can't tell. Um, I'm not from the Bible Belt, but I did grow up in a very religious family. So the witch wound um, is really the social, cultural, or religious parts where we are taught to doubt our intuition, to doubt our magic, to silence ourselves, that we should not be heard. And it is a cultural thing. Like it even ties into like the satanic panic that happened in the 80s, where like, the goth subculture, the punk rock subculture, witchcraft in general, was all targeted by like extremist Christians.
Mhm.
And so when we look in media, like, you know, what are we taught about witchcraft? What are we taught about these things? Like, and then if you have that religious layer, like that's a whole big shebangy, right? So the witch wound is really that part of ourselves where, and it dives even deeper into just the magical practice, but it's also like how the feminine and women have been silenced. We're supposed to be seen, not heard. We're supposed to be respectful. We learn to turn off our intuition. We learn how to not speak up for ourselves. Our throat chakras get blocked. That's that witch wound concept. And it ties into the concept of how many women, and and even indigenous people were silenced and persecuted for their practices for being women, or when you look at like how like Native American, and like African practices were demonized.
Right.
Like that creates a witch wound that we all carry in one way or another. Um, and so working through the witch wound is really stepping into your power. And if you're somebody who wants to get into witchcraft and we have this notion of, oh, light and love only, like I can't do baneful magic. I like to call baneful magic radical protection.
Mm.
And you look into, well, I can't do this because how will it come back around? Or the threefold law or
Mhm.
karma and stuff. Like, you know what? Fuck karma. Because right now I can think of 6 men who fucking abused at least like me and at least a handful of other women that are walking fucking free. And I have to pick up the pieces of what they fucking did to me. That's
Mhm.
not fair. I didn't deserve that. And they're out living their fucking lives. Like, fuck that.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, um, anyways, that's a whole other shebangy. So like healing the wound is really learning how to step into your power, how to find your voice, how to allow yourself to tap into the ancient wisdom that was repressed, whether it was because you're a woman, whether because you were indigenous, whatever reason, and peeling back the social, cultural, and religious layers around how that should be. And we see that a huge, the religious trauma and the witch wound out here is so fucking strong. And that's why a lot of people, when they leave the church and they're getting into spirituality, they fall super hardcore into the very like, and you know what? I know some light workers out there who are wonderful people and I see what they're doing, but I also see people fall into the very toxic light worker communities,
Mhm.
and I call it Christianity light. And
Right.
so it's just enough into witchcraft, it's just enough into spiritual practices and returning to, using plant medicine and
Mhm.
tapping into our intuition and our psychic abilities and all of that. It's safe. It's a safe little container where they can go into, but they can still fall back on Christianity just in case
Mhm.
Jesus really does come back. Well, I believed in Jesus, but they can't fully embrace and accept these parts of ourselves. And like I said earlier, a lot of the new age light worker spiritual beliefs have some really fucked up roots that people just don't realize. They just don't
Mhm.
realize where it comes from.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of these people that, leave Christianity to do that particular phase of, witchcraft or whatever,
I had it
they
too,
bounce
so I
back.
ain't
They
hating.
bounce back a lot of times because,
Mhm.
they hit a point where something didn't work out and they're like, well, it was probably when I left Jesus, right? And it's like, why do you
Or
even got to leave Jesus? Like, why can't you just work with whatever deities that you want to work with? Like Jesus
whatever,
isn't excluded in witchcraft if you want to
Jesus
bring him
isn't
along.
excluded. Yeah, like I don't hate, like I see like I can go in super hardcore depth about like Jewish mysticism and how like a lot of magical practices that we know today come from ceremonial Jewish mysticism.
Right.
It's all fucking there too. So like that's a whole ass fucking thing. Um and but yeah, they bounce back, and a lot of it is that they start hitting the trauma. They start hitting these things, and these parts where they have to start doing shadow work, because
Mhm.
or they start hitting these things, and their fallback because of that religious trauma or that fear keeps them from really delving out. And so yeah, a lot of people go back. A lot of
Yeah.
people go back, or they dive deep in like I did, because I have a little light worker era. I ain't gonna
Right.
lie.
Right. Nothing against the light worker. It's just, it's been hard for me because, people will gravitate towards me as they're starting their spiritual journey. And then when they bounce back to Christianity, they demonize all of this work that they were doing. They were,
Hmm.
psychic for, 2 months, or they did tarot cards for a week or whatever. And and now that they flipped it, they're like, oh, well, all pagan practices are evil. And then, that was a whole thing. I just had to like detach because I'm like, I can't take on this burden of how people want to perceive it because I'm not an evil person. I don't hurt people,
And
I
that's a witch wound. That's a witch
right.
wound that so many of these people carry, because all these phenomenal natural gifts that we have in this plant medicine and
Mhm.
these esoteric practices that have been a lot around a lot longer than fucking Christianity.
Right.
Um, we are taught socially, culturally, religiously that this is witchcraft and that this is evil, and people, they've experienced clearly some reason they see something's wrong with the church, so they want to start gravitating, and then they hit these blocks because of these belief systems and all these things that they were taught, and then they get conflicted, and then they just go back to what they know and what's comfortable.
Right. Because they have a community there that
Yeah.
loves to welcome them back in from
Oh
their demonic
yeah.
ways.
Oh yeah, dude. No, check this out. I worked at a gas station out here where I live for a couple months. I had to like kind of step away from everything and get into some and focus on my like EMDR and my trauma therapy and shit. And because healers need healers too, because girls
Absolutely.
is players too, but like because healers need healers too. Anyways, um, ugh, I make parody songs with my kid all the time, and so I'm in a constant state of. Anyways,
I love it.
um, yeah, it's fun. Um, so I was working at this gas station, and this guy, he would come like towards the end of the night, and he wasn't like the worst of them, I guess. Like there were way worse ones. But he like one night he dropped like $200 in lottery tickets. And he clearly was like on something, and he was like trying to proposition me and like hit on me, and see if because I would dress like Wednesday Adams at this little yeehaw gas station in the middle of nowhere in the South. So like he's talking to me, and he was like, "So you practice witchcraft?" And I was like, "Yeah, I ain't scared. I'll tell people. What are you gonna fucking do about it?" Um, and he was like, "Well, I don't know. I just worry about you." And I was like, "Why?" Like, I'm really happy with what I do. I'm really free. I'm in trauma therapy. Like, I'm doing all right. And he was like, "Well, I just think you need to get right with the Lord." And I was like, "Sir, you just dropped $200 in lottery tickets. You've opened up to me about how you're on drugs, and you're trying to have sex with me. You can't just flip this around and tell me I need to get right with God. I think you need to worry about your relationship with
Right.
Jesus."
Right. Yeah, it sucks that people don't see that this is our spiritual path, and it's like that's offensive. Like if we went up to some Christian and just like insulted their religion, you know what I mean? Like we would be laughed
I'm
out.
not
It's like,
against that. I'm just
well, you
kidding.
know what I mean? It's just like, why can't they view our path as just as sacred as any of the other faiths, like the big denominational faiths? But if you practice witchcraft or you're a pagan, somehow this is like some niche thing, and like it's okay to bully those people and to say, oh, well, your gods aren't real. But if we did that to some of these other faiths, it
I'm
would be seen as like hate.
convinced. I'm convinced that like they totally worship like a really fucked up like insecure god. I'm like convinced. I'm not gonna get into that. I don't want to
Right.
offend people. Yeah, I do. But yeah, there's just so much fucking dumb shit about it.
Yeah, because in
Everything's
paganism,
just
there's room for all sorts of deities. So it's
there's
like
room for
I'm
all
not
sorts of
offended by
shit.
anybody's religion as long as they
You
don't
know
try to
what?
convert me.
Exactly. I'm not offended about anybody else's religion until they fucking turn it on me and try to make me feel like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, I don't like
Like
that at all.
realistically, like, and that's when like I'll tell you your God's dead. Like that's when I will be obnoxious because I'm not scared to be obnoxious.
Right. Well, I love that. That's awesome.
But yeah, it's just it's crazy and to see how like the witch wound out here and you have all these people who are like growing up, I was told that my intuition and my ability to like have that gut feeling that something's wrong. I thought that that was some weird religious thing
Hmm.
that was put into me by, and so I rejected that. Like I thought that that was and that's like it's like that's a great example for the witch wound of like where my natural intuition, my ability to discern shit, because I heard all of this stuff, like that was me not trusting because they made it all patriarchal and stuff. Of course they did.
Right.
um but really, you have so many people who are leaving, they are leaving the churches out here in fucking droves, like they're fucking like leaving, and they want to get into the stuff, but they are so scared of stepping into their power. They are so scared of doing the stuff because there is fear, like their nervous systems have been triggered. And I mean, I just couldn't, I have a 9-year old, like I couldn't imagine telling my daughter, at her tender younger ages, like, if you don't do this, I hell, and like going into like really fucked up descriptions, like I just couldn't imagine triggering that much fear into my daughter as a form of control.
Right.
Like I
Absolutely.
know people who sit here and they're like, I have the like they started having nightmares of kids of like about hell and
Mhm.
like the fear and the nervous system. And so that gets so embedded deep into your psyche.
Yeah.
And so people are scared to leave. They're scared to do this. And they have this inability to trust themselves and trust their power. And that's the witch wound.
Mm-hmm.
Or, this whole like, with the satanic panic shit that happened in the 80s, which I was born in 89, so I have no fucking clue. Like, I mean, I see the aftermath, but even like the social making fun of it or not taking it seriously, or is this even real, like people will doubt, like as they step into this stuff, they will doubt their power, they will doubt their intuition, they will doubt their magic,
Hmm.
from that as well. And so it's but like I also said, the witch wound goes deeper than that because
Right.
we were persecuted
Hmm.
for our stuff in one way or another, and through many different cultures. Paganism was, you know wiped out in a lot of areas all over the world at various different points. And they had to repress the stuff, and they went after the women because the women were the healers, we were the midwives, we were the ones who were, you know getting in touch with nature. We were the roles that we roll, the
Hmm.
roles that we roll like that. The roles that we roll.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been hard stepping into my power. And so I had the Christian side of it, which was hard to overcome because,
Yeah.
you got to be a good girl. And then I went from that into this relationship with this hardcore atheist. So it was just like
That's
total
fun.
gaslit every magical
Yeah.
aspect of myself and called me delusional and said I watched too many Disney movies. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like there was
There you
so much
go.
more than just the Disney movies, right? Like, but he hit it as like I was being immature,
Yeah.
and I just
And
needed
that's
to
such
grow
a
up.
that's such a witch wound on his end.
Right, right. And I love that you're acknowledging that aspect of people. So it's like we don't have to take it so personally because they just haven't healed that aspect of themselves. And so it's like it's easier to say, okay, well, you're projecting and this isn't about me, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, it isn't about you. I honestly don't think I can ever date or be with someone who isn't into somewhat of a similar path than I
yeah,
am. I've
absolutely.
tried. I can't. Like I'm not here to be some weird experience for any other men ever again.
Yeah.
Um yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah, my ex-husband would make fun of me. He would
Mhm.
make fun of me with the stuff that I would do. And my daughter would come home at like 3, 4 years old. Psychics aren't real, mom.
Mhm. Mhm.
And guess what? This motherfucker is out there not being a fucking dad, and he hooked up with this girl in rehab. I'm gonna be petty for a minute. He hooked up with this girl in rehab, and now they're running around the outside Sedona area being little light workers and healing people's inner childs together. And I'm just like, you
Yeah.
made fun of me for this. And don't you
Yeah.
have like a bunch of kids whose inner child you're fucking up as we speak? Like, I don't think you need to be worrying about other people's inner child as much as you need to be worried about your own children.
Yeah. Yeah. My ex, after we split up, decided he was going to be a Reiki master. And I was like, you can
Dude,
just
what
go
the
fuck off.
fuck? Dude, I am tired of being men's developments. Like,
Right.
I'm tired of being their spiritual development. I always like, I had one guy go super Christian on me after we broke up. I had like my ex-husband's now like a little light worker, like light being Reiki person, and I'm just like, I was
Yeah.
talking with this guy, and we're still good friends now, but I told him all this, and he's like a satanic priest, and he was like, "Oh my God, please don't do this to me." I was like, "Then stop talking to me because I fucking ruin man." We're good friends now though, but
Right.
it was
Right.
just it was just funny. It was just funny, you know. I'm painfully I'm the most celibate slut you'll ever meet.
Right. I love
So,
that.
yeah, you know, like it's the reality, you know, because like I had a lot of really fucked up things happen to me when I was a teenager sexually.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of predatory men in my area, and nobody like ever said anything about that. I got slut shamed. And
Mhm.
so slut's my word now, because
Right.
you know what? I was a victim, not a slut. And so slut's my word now, because you got no one can ever use that word and offend me, because
Right.
slut is my sexuality. And right now my sexuality is very about me,
Mhm.
and I'm not here for the male gaze. And I'm just here for it. You know, that's my sexuality, and I get to share it with whoever the fuck I want. And I am a slut because nobody can ever weaponize that against me ever again.
Mm. I love that so much. I would definitely was slut shamed very young. And I'm like, I wasn't even doing anything wrong, you know? And as I
Right.
got older, I got angry like years later.
Mhm.
Because I really like went in and was like, I am a bad person because I did something that everyone else is doing, but it just I got humiliated for it.
Yeah.
And like I'm in therapy as like an adult, and I'm like, fuck all those people,
Fuck these
you know?
hoes.
Like
Fuck these hoes.
it was ridiculous. So I love that you're just embodying it and
Yeah.
stepping
Yeah.
into
I
your
mean,
power.
it's really about, and that's really what about healing for women is, for me, is embracing your sexuality, however that looks for you.
Right.
Some people, you know, are empowered by sex work. Some people are empowered by celibacy. Some people are
Right.
empowered through having multiple partners, ethically, of course. Some are empowered by wearing, you know, lingerie, and others are empowered by dressing conservatively. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't give a fuck. Take your power back. Take your sexuality, because we have been told for so long how we should be sexual. And you know what is fucking sick? We start to get older and men stop catcalling us.
Mm.
Our teenage and early 20 and younger selves were sexualized
Right.
so intensely by fucking men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I'm not here for the male gaze, because the male gaze is fucking sick. Respectfully, there are some who you know, within reason, but I'm like ready to like tattoo a curse on my body and go full Medusa. And if like men like wrongfully lust for me, their lives get ruined. Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like,
Right.
I wish I could like have this like Medusa-esque like energy of like, yeah.
Like turning them to stone if they fuck with you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I have
like I
the
just
algol conjunct my IC, so I feel like that's just like a part of me. I don't even have to like try. It's just like good luck fucking with me. It'll take care of itself.
yeah. Yeah, and that's really what it boils down to. And so, but that's part of like, you know, women healing is taking our sexuality back and having no shame over our bodies, our sexual desires. Um, you know, embracing our rage. I call it sacred rage. Like, our
Mm,
rage and our anger is valid, you know, and sitting with that. Like I said, I'm valid because I had all this fucked up shit happen to me when I was a teenager. I'm allowed to be angry about that.
yeah.
There
Absolutely.
was a lot of fucked up things. I'm allowed to fucking be angry about that and transmute that in obviously a healthy way. You know,
Right.
I am allowed to sit in that anger and have that, you know. My anger is sacred. My sexuality is sacred. What was another one that I was like totally vibing with today? I was like, "Oh man, that one's so sacred too." What was it? Cuz it's just you know, my self-love is sacred. My
Mm,
ability to love myself for who I am outside of what society, religion, and culture teaches me, all of that is fucking sacred. And taking that back
right.
and just being fully fucking comfortable in who the fuck I am, that's what this shit's all about for me. That's what the path of the dark goddess is for me, is um, taking back what was taken from me and making
Right.
it my own and helping other people do so.
Beautiful. So we're getting close to the end, but I would like to
I'm
take
Sian.
a moment for you to share a little bit of information about your Dark Goddess Coven that you're with.
Hey, okay, so you guys know my history, you hear me talk. So I created this thing called the Goddess Coven. I actually literally just fucking launched it. So this one is for the witches. The witches who relate to everything that I said. Like if you've been listening to this and you're fucking like you're getting the chills and you're like, "Oh my fucking god, I feel seen and heard." This is probably like my shit will probably fucking like vibe with you. So, but realistically, the Dark Goddess Coven is a monthly membership. And in this monthly membership, you get shadow work journeys, which are 12-part series where I have taken the mythology and the symbolism of various goddesses, dark goddesses, and created shadow work around them. And so you get access to these shadow work journeys, self-paced, do them as you go. I have an entire online blog that is going to be ever growing with witchcraft, spell work, invocations, information that you can have access to. Um, there is a lot of nervous system regulation techniques, meditations, breath work. I incorporate a lot of somatic and trauma informed healing modalities into my shadow work and into my witchcraft. It is all interlinked together. And so it has all this shit in it. Plus, I'm creating a community. If you are in this membership, you go into a Discord or a Facebook group and you have the ability to connect with like minded witches who are on the same path. And yeah, you know what? This shit ain't for fucking everybody, and that's okay because I'm
Mhm.
here for those who it is. And realistically, this is about. If you feel the path of the dark goddess, if you want to do shadow work and you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, if you have trauma, if you have a lot of unresolved things from your past and you're scared to get into shadow work, like that's okay. Like I'll teach you and show you. I have a lot of content that goes into that. If you want to get serious about witchcraft and utilize it for fucking healing and transformation and empowerment, like that's what this is all about. And that's what the path of the dark goddess is all about, is realistically digging deep into your shadow and digging into those unlovable parts of yourself and transmuting your pain and finding empowerment, and then just helping the end result is we all help each other fucking heal.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
Yeah, and it's an online experience. I have a nice little website. You log in, you can view all the content, and it's really cool. And so here's the thing, Astral Hour listeners, I am busting out a specific discount for you guys where if you type in Astral, you will get 10% to anybody who buys your subscription. So I'm going to be super fucking honest. I'm really tired of healing being gate kept, whether it's through like the mental health field or through like coaches and healing modality people who are like out there like charging arms and legs. And I get it. There is a level where we have to put our own roofs over our heads and feed our own families. And that's why I came out with what I did, was to obviously I have bigger ticket packages for people who want one-on-one experiences, but I created this membership to give pathways to healing for pretty much anybody. Um, it's all accessible. Like all of my work that I do and that I have these big ticket packages for, everybody's going to get the framework for that. Like I have it full access for everybody. So it's only $99 a year, but you get 10% off, which means that you get $89.10 for an entire year. So you get access to hopefully by the time people listen to this, 2, 3 shadow work journeys, which are 12-part experiences that are built around dark goddesses, um, meditations, videos, an entire, I have like already 20 blog posts of like spell work and witchcrafts and invocations, plus access to a community of people. So type in Astral Hour. And my website is www.pathofthedarkgoddess.com. And if you go to services, you'll see the Dark Goddess Coven. You go enter and I'll write the description out for this. If you're interested in this, please read the description. But it's
Yes.
Astral at pathofthedarkgoddess.com for the year-long subscription. And if you can't afford that, it's $9 a month, or you can enter this and get it for $89 or $89.10. That was chaotic.
Yeah, I love it. We made it. We made it work.
I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if someone wanted to start in like 3 months, they would still get access to the beginning. They wouldn't miss out on anything, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm
nope.
interested when my brain is not like fully weighed
Yeah.
down with final
Um,
exams.
no, I totally get it. Yeah. So what I'm uploading today, and that is uploaded now, is still going to be there.
Okay. So you
Everything
can
is
kind of start at your
self-paced.
own pace. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have it set up. I really want people to do chill the fuck out, and nervous system and this stuff to kind of prepare to get into shadow work and create like stuff. Like there's a whole process, but realistically, what is on the website today is going to be there in 3 months, in six
Right.
months. You might have to like go through the blogs a little bit, but you'll see. It's really cool. Like my goal is to have like probably like 6 or 7 different shadow work journeys for various dark goddesses. And you don't have to fuck with every goddess,
Right.
that's fine. But I just want to have this widespread concept of shadow work stuff. And I have so much planned. Like this is gonna be so fucking delicious.
Yeah.
And so, but realistically, you get access to like all my services, my grimoire, my workings, everything for a very affordable price. The big ticket offers come in when you want to actually start working with me one on one.
Right. Right. Which is really helpful, to like you were saying when you were doing the shadow work, like you got thrown in. And it's so nice to have somebody to be like, hey, I feel like I'm drowning. I need help. And just to know that there's a person there that can hold that space
And
is
at
so
least
important.
provide the information. Like, even if people
Yeah.
can't afford one on one sessions, I talk about the things that nobody fucking told me about. I did not have trauma informed shadow work. I didn't have anybody talking to me about nervous system, somatic
Right.
healing, and how trauma affects the body and how doing shadow work can bring the shit up. I did
Hmm.
not have anybody give me the information that I'm putting out there. And this is what I wish I would have had 5, 6 years
Right.
ago. And that's why I made it, because I know there are a ton of other witches out there who needed what I need five,
Mhm.
6 years ago.
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome. I'm so thrilled to share your work with our audience.
I'm so excited.
This episode was great. I started out like tired and I'm like so full of enthusiasm now. So I'm like riding that wave.
Good.
So
Good. I
yeah.
like to be enthusiastic and high energy and make people
Yeah.
feel better after hanging out with them. So, yeah, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
me on here. And
Thank you.
yeah, this is fucking great.
Right. Yeah, it's great. Well, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.